Okay, so West Ham's handling of the Declan Rice saga has actually really got quite a lot of criticism. And I understand some of it. I have issues with some of the way West Ham dealt with certain things. But it has caused a real stir, a real storm from all the way back at the very beginning of this whole transfer saga before he became an Arsenal player. And Arsenal fans, obviously had an issue with how long it was taking and all that. But now even in kind of the life after Declan Rice for West Ham, they're trying to get certain deals done. There's criticism about the way they maybe dealt with the selling of Declan Rice to Arsenal. And now they're trying to get certain targets. And all this is kind of creating this very interesting kind of, discussion a little bit, or certainly thoughts in my head about how should you approach selling players? How should you approach these kind of deals? Because West Ham have the right to demand whatever it is they want for their best player and negotiate for the very, very best. And I think it's interesting that might not have done them a lot of favours in the future. But like I said, there's other things that I've got a bit of an issue with. Let's go into it now. And I want to start with the transfer saga and how it all unfolded. Because we know that Arsenal, here are the things that are sort of, I'm going to say fact, or at least reported by journalists. Arsenal went in for Declan Rice back in January. They said no chance he's leaving in the middle of the season, and that's fine. Arsenal turned their attentions to Cecil, but very much remained in talks with Declan Rice, selling a project and trying to beat him. Beat Man City, Chelsea, Bayern Munich, we find out came into it, Man United, all to his signing. And that was going to take a lot. That was going to take a lot of groundwork, because if you're just competing financially, maybe Arsenal can't offer the best deal. If you're just competing with what they've done in recent history, again, can Arsenal offer the best deal? So they had to really sell a vision, and they did that. Now, look, I don't think there was anything in the way of I think West Ham had a problem with Arsenal talking to Declan Rice and doing the groundwork that they had to in the build-up to all this. But supposedly there were, and I've got to say, not all reporters have said this, but some have said that apparently it was going to take around 80 million. That was the rough figure that Arsenal were being told it would take to get Declan Rice out of West Ham. Now, we approach the summer and we approach sort of June time, and things are in a real stalemate, and there's a lot of back and forth, and suddenly we're hearing 120 million is what West Ham want. Everyone's sort of saying, well, that's a bit ridiculous, it's a bit overpriced, Arsenal trying to negotiate. But supposedly the criticism West Ham have got is for reportedly, or not reportedly, I shouldn't say that, it wasn't reported, but the reports that were coming out, a lot of people felt were briefed by West Ham, trying to spark a bidding war, trying to get Man City to come in and finally put in an offer, trying to basically make that price climb up. They weren't going to make Arsenal have him easy. Now, what I would say about that is, I don't have an issue with that at all. I don't have an issue with the fact that West Ham, whether they briefed the media, whether they didn't, whether they were trying to sort of, do the dark arts to get what they can for Declan Rice, fine. I actually have no issue with that whatsoever. West Ham are in a position here where they are selling their best player, and their best player in a long, long time, to Arsenal, to a London rival to a degree. A lot of West Ham fans aren't happy that Declan Rice has gone to Arsenal. And that might have been reflected in a statement that we're going to read out in a little bit, but I'll talk to you about that in a sec. And they've got every right to demand as much as they want. In the end, Arsenal's offers, which were around, was it 80 million the first offer? Well, then one was around 90. They ended up, trying to blow Man City out the water, which in fact they did, and offering 105 million. Now, I do actually think it's a little weird that they didn't even accept the original 105 offer, which I think had as much as 70 to 75 million pounds up front, and the rest spread over 3 years. But the two clubs came together and did a deal. What's quite funny is Arsenal took so long to actually sign the final documents that apparently West Ham were getting frustrated, and then of course briefing that to the media, or at least the media were getting hold of the information, that West Ham were frustrated with how long it took. So were Arsenal being petty, or do these things just take time? Who knows? But ultimately the saga got done. Now, I don't have an issue with either club involved in all this. West Ham fans have issues with Arsenal's derisory offers, insulting offers. I don't think the money that Arsenal were coming in for was in any way, shape insulting, especially when you find out what supposedly the original transfer fee was looking like. But again, that's just one report saying that. But ultimately a deal got done, everyone's happy, and I don't blame West Ham as well for trying to get him for as much as possible, and Arsenal getting him for as low as possible. And ultimately they settled on was it a British transfer record? I mean, insane money. What I do have a little bit of an issue with, and it's slightly watered down, and there's context to all this, I had a little bit of an issue with the statement from West Ham when he came out. Now, the statement very much felt to me as an opportunity for West Ham to say to their fans, we didn't want to do this. It's like they were firefighting a little bit. We didn't want to do this. We didn't want to sell him. We offered him a lot of money. We're trying to keep our best players, but ultimately he wants to leave. We're going to honour that, and we are going to make sure we reinvest in the club. Now, here, let me read you out some of this statement, which of course has disappeared just as I try open it. Here we go, let's find it again. Right, West Ham Club statement. Now, this is the statement that was released upon him leaving. Now, since then, like I said, there's context. There have been some really nice videos, some, he penned an open letter to West Ham fans that of course they shared. There have been some very kind of nice touching moments. But I thought as an initial statement, the position from West Ham should have been to maybe congratulate West Ham on everything he's done, title winning captain, and not so much play the almost defensive side of things. Because a lot of people felt that the statement came across as a little bit salty. So of course he mentions his kind of upbringing, he mentions what he's achieved, and David Sullivan says, "I'm sorry to see Declan leave us, but I believe that everyone at West Ham should be very proud of the part that we have played in his journey from the academy of football at Chadwell Heath to becoming one of the most valuable young player in English football." Yeah, okay, fine. Then they say, "I would like to make it clear to our supporters that we did not want to sell Declan." They mentioned that they offered him a long-term contract with offers to secure his future, that they wanted to build a team around him, but once Declan made it clear that he wished to move and seek a new challenge, the club felt it wasn't right to stand in his way. He leaves with sincere thanks, respect and love from everyone here, having earned his place in history alongside the great Bobby Moore and Billy Bonds as the only players to have captained West Ham to a major trophy. Look, there are some nice lines in there, no doubt. There are some nice kind of moments, and David Moyes then goes on to say, "I'd like to personally thank Declan for everything he has done during his time at West Ham. Obviously, it's sad to say goodbye to someone who's been with us for so long, but we must now look forward. West Ham is a huge club, and as history shows, no player is ever bigger than the club. Our entire focus is now on building upon the success we enjoyed last season, adding to our talented UEFA Europa Conference League title-winning squad as we enter our third consecutive season in Europe." They're just trying to remind everyone that we're doing okay and we can add, and I get that. I just think when you look at the way Jurrien Timber left Ajax, with real thanks, with real kind of praise and applause for everything he's done, very much championing the Arsenal move Ajax were. And West Ham failed to mention Arsenal once, and look, I don't actually really have much of an issue with that. I just think it could have been a little bit more of a thanks and appreciation for what Declan did, because everyone knows that West Ham wanted to keep him. Everyone knows that West Ham offered him a lot of money, and everyone knows that West Ham aren't going to stand in his way. I don't think West Ham fans have an issue with any of that whatsoever. I think the only issue they might have is the fact he's going to Arsenal, and that would be an issue with Declan Rice, not an issue with West Ham at all. But I think most West Ham fans are very happy with the money they've got, very happy ultimately with the deal they've done, and wish him all the best. I just think that statement is the only part in this whole saga that have a little bit of a, really? It just sounded a little bit bitter. And I think maybe a little bit more love could have been shown. But I think in the aftermath, like I said, some of the other content that's come out, the open letter, the video and all that, I think has been nice. A nice touch. And I think no doubt he'll go back to West Ham with a lot of love and applause. But another topic that sort of came up in all this was a real discussion around, have West Ham now almost played themselves a little bit in the transfer window? And it's hard to say, because they want to maximise every single penny they can out of this Declan Rice deal. They want to get as much as possible, and they've gone and done that, but has it cost them in terms of their incomings and replacements? Because now a 40 to 50 million pound player in João Palhinha, maybe a little bit more, fair enough, because he was one of the best defensive midfielders in the league last year, is now being quoted around 80 million. The problem is that this whole Declan Rice deal has been so public, and I think, to be fair, it was always going to be pretty public. I don't think that's West Ham's fault or anyone's. I think you're always going to find out these fees, and you're always going to know ultimately the money that he's going to go for. But because they've sort of focused on maximising everything there, and maybe not having replacements secured, West Ham fans, you let me know whether that should have been dealt with better. Now Palhinha has been quoted around 80 million, and quite frankly, everyone knows West Ham have money. And I do think sometimes, I'm not saying West Ham necessarily got this wrong, but I'm just sort of opening a wider discussion here. I think sometimes the way you conduct yourself in the market when it comes to sales can sometimes just have a net positive impact when you're talking about the way you deal with incomings. I'll give you an example, Man City. Now, I know Man City, with all the money they spent over the years, are able to put themselves in this fantastic position. The platform is fantastic. They can do business pretty much how they want. But don't underestimate the groundwork that's actually been done the last 4 or 5 years. When it comes to saying no to certain deals and then doing other deals that do suit, it puts them in a position where actually they can do business at levels that just feel a little bit more suitable. I'll give you examples. They didn't go for Harry Kane. Well, they did go for Harry Kane, but they didn't go for the 120 million that Daniel Levy supposedly wanted. Now, the reality is that signing would have made complete sense. They'd have got 120 million pounds worth. He'd scored a load of goals. They'd have kept winning titles, and no one would be talking about that fee. But they walked away from it. They walked away from doing 120 million for Harry Kane. Why? Because a year later, they knew they could pick up Haaland with, yes, very high wages, but ultimately around a £50 million transfer fee. And that is far more stomachable for a Man City. By walking away from certain deals, they're able to get certain deals like that. But if you look at some of their sales as well, they're not really taking the piss with those either. Raheem Sterling, potentially a world-class player who scored bags of goals at Man City, went for around 50 million. Now, I think the length of the contract and what was left might have played a bit of a part in that, but I think they could have easily demanded 70 to 80 million for a player like Raheem Sterling. But they just operate in ways where it's like, look, we're not going to take the piss out of you, but don't take the piss out of us. And I think that just leaves them operating at a pretty sensible model. Declan Rice for 105 million, it is more than he's really worth, let's be honest. Of course, what he's worth is obviously dependent on what he's worth to West Ham or what he's worth to Arsenal, what they're willing to pay. But I think really he's an £80 million player probably. But when others are paying a premium for your players, perhaps you're going to have people asking the same the other way. And when you've got Jesus, Zinchenko, Sterling, all going for around 35 to 50 million, it's no surprise that Man City are able to do the business they want with incomings at slightly more reasonable prices. Gvardiol they're talking about 75 million, and there's hesitation to do that deal. Why? Because they've got other players. So, should there be criticism about the way West Ham have dealt with this signing, the outgoing, and then where it's left them for the incomings? Maybe, but I just think the grass is greener. You can always do better one end and do worse the other. I don't know. They've got 105 million for their best player. I can't begrudge them that, and I can't really begrudge them too much the way they've gone about it. Arsenal fans will feel a certain way. West Ham fans will feel a certain way the other way. But ultimately, I think it's a very good deal for all three parties involved. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel. Go check out everything on AFTV as well. I'm shooting this not from my regular set here in Washington, DC. So go check out all the contents coming out on AFTV around that. And I'll see you very soon.